So there's this post I saw on LinkedIn from a veteran story artist, director, Christian Roman, and he had a bit of a hot take, and he basically said that perspective grids are distracting and ugly. After looking at least 1,000 storyboard portfolios over the last weekend at Lightbox Expo, I have to ask, why is everyone obsessed with putting perspective grids on their storyboards? I can understand putting a light grid on a ground plane, but in the sky, or seeing a grid of 1 point perspective behind a drawn background, like a building or a room, so many tight and boring backgrounds drawn with straight digital lines, hold, shift, and drag on the loose gestural characters. Did some teacher or director tell everyone to put a grid behind every shot, right? So that was Christian's hot take on grids. And the first time I saw this, I kind of like immediately agreed with Christian as somebody who strictly focuses on doing boards for feature animation. I don't usually put like those grids like everywhere on the floor, on the wall, in the sky and stuff like that. I oftentimes try to not have grids in my boards for feature, and it's strictly for aesthetic reasons because I think it just looks like ugly, and I also find a way to show perspective using objects in the environment. You know, like if there's a tree or rocks or something like that, I would draw those things in perspective, so who's ever watching the boards would actually like understand, you know, how far or close something is, right? Now that's how I work personally. I've worked a bit in TV. I had an internship in South Korea, and I worked on like a kids TV show called Super Wings. And that production would use like, you know, grids like everywhere on the floor, in the sky and stuff like that, right? And for me personally, I didn't like that aesthetic, but that was the way that that studio worked, and that's the way that they wanted the boards to be done, you know, because I worked closely with the storyboarding supervisor, and he would always be like, you know, talking about the grids and making sure everything is good, so when they send it overseas, you can understand what's happening and stuff like that, right? So I kind of understand both sides. I'm not fully sure of Christian's like full background, if he's worked in TV here. When I'm scrolling through his LinkedIn, I'm seeing like his major thing is working at Pixar. So maybe he's worked at like feature film studios and like cinematic studios his entire career. Maybe he worked on TV. I don't know, right? But as a mentor and as a teacher, as somebody who's taught people who wanted to get into TV and people who wanted to get into feature, I see, you know, different portfolios, right? And a lot of the times, the people who want to get into TV shows or work for Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon and stuff like that, their boards would be heavily full of grids. It would be like shift hardline grids. You know, personally, I don't like that, right? And when I'm mentoring them, I usually tell them, I am going to teach you to board for feature. And I usually try to encourage them to draw in this loose gestural way that appeals to people in feature, right? And feature has like a particular drawing style or a house style that, you know, pretty much all these studios like draw in. So like DreamWorks, Pixar, they all kind of draw similarly and look for artists that draw in that similar way. This is kind of like a kind of peep behind the curtain to kind of understand how directors and head of stories kind of look at your work at studios, right? You literally have a story artist and director literally telling you, I don't like that. And most likely, he's not going to hire you if he's directing a film and he's looking for story artists. He's probably not going to hire the people who has like these heavy grid looking storyboards, right? And, you know, you might kind of find it kind of, you know, bullish that he's kind of saying, oh, that stuff looks ugly, I hate it, it's stupid, you know, kind of thing. But see it as a way of understanding how these directors think. And this is somebody who seems to be working in feature, right? So if you're applying for a feature job, I'm pretty sure a lot of the other directors kind of think like him, especially if they've worked in feature their entire life. They prefer that loose gesture looking type of storyboard that just appeals to them, right? I don't think doing the grids is wrong because certain productions tend to want that. He didn't really explain more, and I'm not gonna read all of these comments to find out how much he's gonna like explain what he means. But just by reading what he says here, feature and TV are very different, and the people that hire on feature and TV want different things. And this is just a basically one director saying kind of like what he looks for in portfolios in a very kind of blunt and no holds back kind of way, right? So that was my thought on this. Let me know what you guys think about grids. Do you use grids in your storyboards? Do you try to avoid them? Do you want to work in feature or TV? And how do you feel about a feature director or somebody who works in feature saying that they absolutely hate these very clean, shift-drawn grid lines in storyboards, right? If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.